guys, so this is absolutely not ideal, but I want you to be able to hear me teach to you since here I am feeling perfectly fine. So I have, I'm gonna go by my laptop here. I've got the notes that you also have in front of you, and we're gonna proceed as normal as we possibly can through this. So while my son is napping, we're gonna go through some notes, and then I've got an activity for you guys to do that summarizes kind of chapters 1 through 8 after this. So make sure that you're following along. We are going to continue with ServSafe chapter 8. And so if I'm looking away, it's because I'm looking at my computer because I don't want to miss anything that we're going over. So we've pretty much gone through about 25–30% of the slides so far based on what we did the other day with the vanilla pudding, but we're going to continue about slide number 18 or 19, and that's talking about prepping produce. So during the preparation of produce, I do not, and that's your blank, I do not have to wear gloves when I'm doing what? I do not have to wear gloves when I'm washing it, okay? That's a little finicky of a rule. I don't have to have gloves on while I'm washing the produce, but as soon as I start cutting it, then I do need to be wearing gloves. So just be mindful of that. Continuing on to slides number 21 through 22, they're talking about variances. And I want you to kind of understand what a variance is. A variance means that an establishment is doing something that's rather obscure. And I've kind of got that in quotations as well. Something that is just, it's not normal per se. They're doing something that either extends a shelf life of meat or there any number of things. We'll talk about the 3 that stand out the most to me. And you can see other ones on the presentation. The 3 that stand out are smoking foods to preserve it, which means I'm smoking something like salmon or smoking a meat of some sort. And it's not for the purpose of flavor. This is for the purpose of I'm going to extend the shelf life. And so to me, that's rather obscure, and most restaurants are not doing that, or most establishments are not doing that. The second one is sprouting seeds or beans. And we'll talk about why you don't see bean sprouts or seed sprouts in many, many places, because they are associated with a high risk TCS food. So that's another one. And then offering live shellfish from a display tank. Offering live shellfish from a display tank. So that's a restaurant that when you walk in, you've got this really, really cool like lobster tank. And at dinner, you decide to order a lobster and they go over to that tank, they get that lobster out, and suddenly that's your meal. And so they have to have a variance in place, just proving that they're gonna take care of this. Like that lobster is becoming someone's food. Those seed sprouts or beans are becoming someone's food eventually. That meat is going to be eaten eventually. And so these places need to confirm that they are following the rules to food safety. So letter C, it says they must have a HACCP, which is, you'll hear a little bit more about HACCP. I'm not going to go into detail today. HACCP is HACCP, and that's a hazard analysis critical control point plan in place. And again, we'll talk about that another day, but they have to have a HACCP plan. Continuing with slides 23 through 31. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here because you've already done your temperatures document, and so you've kind of broken those things down. I am going to change my camera view for just a moment so you can see a PowerPoint to the best of my ability here on the different temperatures. So give me just a second. Because I like pictures. I love pictures. And this is the best way that I can show you. So let me change my camera view here. I can't change my camera view. We're gonna adapt on the fly. I'm going to send over a different video for that one particular part. Didn't realize I couldn't change my camera view. All right, so continuing with our notes. So we'll come back to cooking foods. Keep in mind, I've kind of got a sub bullet there. You can always go higher. Like when we were gonna do the pork, which I'm unfortunate, like it's going to the freezer. We'll get it done, hopefully. That pork, while the minimum internal cooking temperature is 145, when we cook it for up to 8 hours, it's gonna go far beyond 145. So, and that's just for the sheer purpose of getting it nice and tender, and like there's just so many other components that go into cooking that particular cut. So keep in mind, it's just a minimum internal cooking temperature. You can always go higher if you want. That is an option. I'm not sure what slide this is, but consumer advisories. I know you've seen them before. You've seen them on a menu and you've got like a little asterisk next to the steak or the seafood or whatever you might be eating. And that asterisk is a consumer advisory. It's disclosing the fact that something may be raw or undercooked. I know you've seen them. They've got signs. They're on the menus. It's just stating that if you're a high-risk population and you happen to consume something that is raw or undercooked, you could get sick. And that's just the restaurant saying, like, we're not liable for that. You are liable for making sure you don't consume the wrong foods, okay? Located on menus. Hopefully you filled in that blank. The high-risk populations, no foods, okay? Really, if you, I'll give you the example. My grandmother used to live, before she passed away, used to live at Presbyterian Village. And there were foods that they just were not allowed to serve. One of them was raw seed sprouts, or like the beans, seeds and beans. I want to confirm that I'm getting all of these right. The raw or undercooked meat. So they could never have like a burger patty that was raw or undercooked. The eggs. Eggs is a big one. She loved a good fried egg. Really loved a good fried egg, which is where the yolk is runny. And she couldn't get that while she was there because it was considered to be raw or undercooked. So no seed sprouts, no raw or undercooked eggs. And the last one was no unpasteurized milk or juice. So that is on slide number 35 if you need to reference that on your packet in front of you. You don't find a whole lot of unpasteurized milk or juices. Most of everything that you get from the grocery store has already been pasteurized. So very seldomly are you going to be dealing with that particular dilemma, okay? When we get to culinary too, one of our big labs is mozzarella cheese from scratch. And I always have to find raw milk, which is super hard. And there's one farm that I've been able to identify, and I'll drive all the way over to Powder Springs to pick up that raw unpasteurized milk because it just makes a far superior cheese. So there are pros and cons to working with the raw milk. Okay. Cooling. I know you guys are becoming a little bit more familiar with this. We did it with the pudding the other day. We made pudding, it was hot, but that pudding needed to go into the refrigerator to cool down. And so we surrounded our big old mixing bowl with ice in an attempt to cool it down. And many of you notice every so often, either I was doing it or a student was doing it, they were stirring it because the outside got really cold, but the inside was still hot. So we're redistributing that heat. Letter A, never place hot food in the refrigerator to cool. Big no-no. So for the example, the vanilla pudding. The vanilla pudding itself might not have gone bad. That's probably not gonna go bad. That's cooling down in an appropriate amount of time. What happens though is that other things in the refrigerator run the risk of then being pushed in the temperature danger zone. So the milk, if I'd put that hot pudding right next to the milk and suddenly my milk is at 45, 47 degrees because that pudding is so hot, now I'm putting the milk at risk. That's more the issue that we're dealing with there. We must attempt to cool as quickly as possible. Kind of talking about one of those general guidelines. We want to do everything as quick as we possibly can. So just simply leaving it out, hoping that it cools, is not going to be an effective method. So sitting on the counter hoping it'll cool is not ideal. The clock, now here's a big one. Underline, highlight, or star this particular bullet. The clock, now that vanilla pudding was far higher in terms of temperature than 135 degrees, okay? Far higher. It got to boiling, so we're looking more closely to like 200, 212, depending on boiling point there. The clock doesn't start ticking until it hits 135 degrees. Temperature danger zone. So technically speaking, 135 degrees is when the clock truly starts. Just a little tidbit there. The two-step cooling process, step number 1, means that it has gotten to that 135. Now my time really starts. I've got 2 hours, that's it. 2 hours to get from 135 degrees to 70 degrees. Here is why I only have 2 hours. This step has to occur while it's sitting in the temperature danger zone, because remember we just said, putting a hot food in the refrigerator isn't an option. So where else is it sitting? It's just sitting out, okay? So we've got 2 hours. Where does this step occur? At room temperature or on the counter. Okay, that's why we've got to do something, and we'll talk about some ways to cool the food quickly besides ice. That's why we've got to do it so rapidly. We really want to beat that 2 hours. Step 2 is 70 degrees to 41 degrees. That's a 4-hour process. But remember, that's occurring in the refrigerator, a much safer zone. It's a cold zone, so I can allow those 4 hours for that to occur. Now, I am realizing I forgot a very, very, very important point that I want you to add into your notes. Add this off to the side. This needs to be in color, because if you don't see this question in your ServSafe assessment, I'd be shocked. I can add hours to the second step if I cool more quickly in the first. So, for example, if I got the vanilla pudding down to 70 degrees in 1 hour, but I got 2, then I can tack that extra hour, I can tack it onto the second step, okay? But the rule does not work in reverse. If the pudding does not cool to 70 degrees, I can't borrow an hour from the second one, because then I'm just allowing more time in the temperature danger zone, and that is a big no-no, okay? So make sure that you've written that exception down. I can always tack onto the second stage of time-wise, so I can push that up to 5.5 hours if I cool really quickly, but I can't borrow it back, okay? And then how to cool foods quickly. You saw the other day, we surrounded the vanilla pudding with ice. That was super effective. That's one of your most effective methods. You can pour into smaller portions. So instead of having, one large portion, you could evenly distribute it into smaller portions. Use metal instead of plastic. If you've been in science before, you know that one's an insulator and one is a conductor of heat. And so you want that metal because it's gonna push that heat away. It's not gonna insulate it like the plastic. And then choose something shallow versus something deep. So something that's only this deep but wide is gonna cool a lot faster than something that is, super, super deep and narrow. So consider what medium you are cooling in, essentially. We're gonna come back to the reheating food. You're gonna notice it probably in your PowerPoint slides. I wanna talk more about that when we talk about service, because to me, that's more of an applicable place for us to talk about service. So I hope you don't have any major questions. If you do, my email is chelsea.bodenhammer@cobbk12.org. Super, super happy to answer questions. I've got my laptop out pretty much all the time right now. Jackson's nap time is from 1 to 3, so that's when I have the most free time to focus on things for you guys. Please just know that I am really, really sorry that I can't be there right now. It truly hurts my heart that I'm not able to be with you guys in person. But I hope that you understand that I'm trying to do what's best for you and just the family dynamic here in general. So I'm gonna leave it at that. You've got another activity coming. Make sure you pay attention, follow along, work with your peers, have fun, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.